Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to episode 25 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testouri. On today's episode, I was joined by Sam Mason. He is the founder and managing director of the Mortgage and Protection Hub. And this conversation was a nice one. So Sam and I first connected about a year and a half ago, and it was over potentially getting in partnership within his business. And since then, we've just kept tabs of each other, caught up. Today's podcast, he talks about his experience as an amateur boxer and how he uses that mindset in business. He talks about openly being money motivated, but when we scratch beneath the surface, he actually explains what from his childhood makes him money motivated. Now, he talks about where he sees himself in 5 years' time, and he gives advice to his 20-year-old self. So, if you want to tune in, go ahead. I'll see you soon.
As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testouri, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy.
Sam, how you doing? Thank you for jumping on the pod. It is a pleasure to have you, and we've probably known each other for about a year and a half now, and you've got a journey which I wanted people to listen to because you've done the classic 9 till 5 and you said, screw that, I'm going to go and do my own thing. But before we get into that, I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. And it's good to see you. It's a difficult one because obviously growth is very different for different people, right? I think for me, growth is, as long as I'm consistently moving the needle. So I've got, big plans, big ideas. So if I've set myself a goal, as long as I'm kind of, one step closer to those goals that I've set myself, then I would call that growth. I think that's what growth is to me. It's just consistently moving the needle closer towards, the end goal that I've set myself. And that goal might change, and it often does. But as long as I'm kind of just one step closer to that initial goal that I've set, then for me that is growth.
And how do you typically goal set now? Is it something you do every year at the start of the year, at a birthday, and are they yearly goals or maybe 5-year goals?
Yeah, I think kind of December, Jan is always a good time to kind of reflect on how the year's gone and what we kind of want to do next year. I'm very conscious of not falling into that trap of only doing it for New Year's resolutions and setting goals and then kind of not sticking to them. So I don't exclusively do it December, Jan, but I do think it's a good time to reflect. The market does kind of tail off a little bit December, so I do use that time to set and plan and reflect on how the year's gone and what I want to do next year. Having said that, I will set kind of daily goals. I will, I've got quite a good morning routine, and I will set goals and I'll add to those goals. Or, if I'm on a run or if I'm exercising, like I'll often think of ideas and have goals that I want to set. So I won't just leave it to the end of the year. I will kind of consistently add to that list of goals, just kind of as we go kind of thing, as we move through, different levels of the business and different stages of life. So I've always been good at just kind of writing those goals down, sticking to them. If they're still there in a couple of weeks, then maybe setting a plan to kind of push towards those goals.
And you've been running your business now for about a year and a half?
Yeah, so set the business up February last year. So yeah, about a year and a half now. Touch wood, so far so good. We've got through a turbulent market, so yeah, excited to see where we can go with it.
And when you first initially set up the business, what was, if you can remember, the first goal you set yourself?
To be honest, because it was such a turbulent market in the mortgage world, which is what my business is, it's mortgage and insurance. My first goal was really just getting through that first year and replacing my employed income. So yeah, first goal was just getting through the year, replacing my income. Nothing kind of crazy or extravagant. It was literally just get through that first year, which we've now done, and gladly we exceeded that goal. But I think for me that was step one, because I'd always been employed, always had a basic salary, So for me, the biggest concern and biggest worry is, am I going to have to take a pay cut? And I think that's probably the scary thing for a lot of people for year one. So yeah, for me, it was just getting through that year one.
Well, congrats on achieving that. And within that period, that first year, did you have any moments of absolute self-doubt where you felt like quitting and you just said, what on earth have I done? Why have I picked this year to quit my business when, as you said, it's so turbulent?
Yeah, there's definitely been, dark times, rough times. I've never questioned, why have I done this? Should I have stayed employed? Because for me, I've always been planning to set a business up from kind of since I can remember. When I was at school, I was very kind of entrepreneurial. I'd save money up to buy stock, sweets, and sell at school. I left college after a week to just go straight into work to learn, how business works and how finance works, so that I can then take those skills to set up a business. So for me, it was a kind of 6, 7, 8 year process of every day kind of pushing myself to kind of setting that business up. So there's never been a time where I've sat there and thought, why did I do this? Because I very much had enough time to kind of prep myself for that and knew that it would be chaotic and there would be tough times. And, that's what I need. I quite kind of thrive off that high pressure. But there have been times where I have thought, oh, hang on a minute, this is not quite going, where I need it to go. This is a little bit scary. Am I going to need to go and pick up some shifts somewhere to kind of make, to kind of pay for my just general outgoings? I think what that came from as well, and I've been quite open about this on my own podcast, is, I had a pretty good start, better start than what I thought. And, it was probably, in terms of numbers, not crazy numbers, but like more numbers in terms of income than I'd been used to before. And I struggled to kind of manage that because, I got a little bit overexcited. Maybe personal expenditure went up on lifestyle and things like that. But then what I didn't really account for is, the times where actually, you have a quiet period. You maybe have 2, 3, 4 weeks on the bounce that there's no new business coming in and your pipeline's dwindling and, you have deals fall through. So I think I kind of, had a good start, which was great, got a bit overexcited, and then had some really kind of quiet times that then, really kind of put me in that red zone in terms of, buffers for and pots for certain things that I need to account for. And those are the times where, I have sat there and gone, oh, this is a little bit dangerous now. We're in a danger zone. So, but the good news is, I've learned from that.
What would you say you've come close to falling into those traps before? Because I think I myself, when I first started coming into a decent bit of money, and I've had periods where I've just thought, this is more money than I know what to do with. And you do become a little bit frivolous at times, and you do think the mill won't stop running. Have you had any moments recently where you've had to restrain yourself from, say, maybe booking a nice lavish holiday or maybe buying a luxury good or something?
Yeah, there's been times like, me and my partner, we've gone on, we've done pretty well with holidays and stuff last year, but, we haven't really had a holiday, just me and her. And, there's definitely been times where I've just had to rein it in, because last year we went a little bit overboard with kind of like personal expenditure. And this year we've kind of, really kind of reined that in and just had to be a little bit more careful. Although I am going away on Saturday, like I said, but, that's, we've kind of fully prepped for that, and we just not making the same mistakes as what we did last year. Is thinking that money that's coming in is just going to be consistent, because there are those downtimes and you need to account for those for sure. So yeah, that has been those times.
And within the business, because naturally with most businesses there's seasonality, there's different trends. How will you cash flow forecast for these up and down periods?
Question. And I think, in terms of cash flow forecast, nothing really official other than, because the problem I had last year was separating business finance to personal finance. So you've got money coming into the business. You then, you obviously pay yourself a salary and dividends or whatever your setup is. But it's sticking to that personal income and not then going, oh, I've run out of personal income. Let me just dip into that, that company money because it's, it's only me in the business. That's all my money. I think what I have done is just separated the two and gone, actually, that's business money and this is my personal money. So I pay myself X and I stick to that. So personal lifestyle and expenditure needs to stick to that figure. So I think for me, that's really what I focused on. So not necessarily, cash flow forecasts and things like that, but just separating the two, the business from personal.
I'm with you. And if you were to look back and you were to give advice to your 20-year-old self or any 20-year-old that is listening to this podcast, then they're thinking, oh, cool, this guy, he was in a full-time job and now he's self-employed and he's running a business and it sounds like he's making more money than he's making in a job, which I'm sure is the case. What advice would you give to them, someone who's got the appetite for it?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to steal a quote from Rob Moore. I don't know if you've seen any of his content, but I would say start now, perfect later. I think so many people fall into the trap of procrastination because they feel like everything needs to be perfect and they need to know everything and the ins and outs of, how they're going to, do this, and this. But it's all just the micro stuff. But actually, what you can do is just start now, perfect later. Everything is downstream from, bringing money in and generating leads. So you can worry about the finer problems kind of later on. I think the benefit of a 20-year-old, and I got into mortgages when I was 19. The benefit of, getting into business younger is that you have, the currency you have that a lot of people don't is time generally. And you have time to make those mistakes and bounce back and learn and just, get as much information as possible and, kind of drive the business forward from an early age. And then hopefully by, 25, you've almost cracked it. You understand how things work and then you can drive forward from there. Even then, if you're then in business for the next 10 years, you're still 35, which is very young. And not a lot of people will set a business up even at 35. So I think my biggest piece of advice would be, start now, perfect later. Don't waste time procrastinating because you're trying to get things perfect. You can just look at businesses that operate. You don't need to come up with a crazy idea, new invention. What you can do is look at businesses that already operate and that are profitable and scalable. Look at those businesses and just do it better. You don't have to come up with the next Apple iPhone. There is plenty of ways that you can build a business even if it's already been done.
I 100% agree, and I think too many people, when I speak to them, because I get people messaging me asking, oh, I want to start up a business, but I don't know what idea to come up with. And I always say to people, look at your core competencies, look at what you already know. For instance, my brother wants to start up a business, and this is something that I know you've done for a while, but he's an amateur boxer. And I said, the easiest business you could probably start is coaching people boxing on the local common or getting some gym space at your gym and then going there. Instead, people want to come up with the next e-com brand and they want to come up with something that's never been done, but they don't have the capital, they don't have the resource, they don't have the skills or knowledge to do it. Whereas there's so many things that are underneath your nose that you can do in order to make money. And I think a lot of people think of the business they set up as being the final business they're ever going to run. And they think, I need to get this idea right. Before I set up Bespoke Brand Developers and Bespoke Academy, I tried a smoothie business.
Yeah.
So I think 18, 19, over a summer. Yeah, like it was a really good lesson. Didn't work. Car washing business is similar to you selling sweets at school. Don't know if you can call that a business really, but I guess we've got the business acumen there.
Yeah.
And just all these small little businesses. I set up an e-com brand, which was a terrible idea when I tried it. But even so, these experiences are great. And it's kind of the classic saying of, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it matters how many times you get back up. I think I've misquoted it there from Rocky, but You get my
We get the
premise. So,
gist.
exactly. Talking about boxing there, I remember talking to you before. So, were you an amateur boxer or just recreationally boxing?
Yeah. So amateur boxing. So I didn't have too many fights. I think I had 3 fights in the end. Lost first one, won the second two, and then kind of life just got in the way. Work, business, and everything else. Even if you're training for a 3 2 minute rounds, you've got to train 5 6 days a week for that.
You consume it.
Realistically, 3 2 minute rounds sounds like nothing, but with the adrenaline dump and someone coming at you, and you've got to keep fit. It's 5 days, 6 day training regime just for that small fight. So I would love to get back in the ring, but I definitely put that on hold kind of when I started getting into finance and work and business. But I've carried over, I think, a lot of those principles from training, and it has taught me a lot for sure.
What would you say are the most valuable lessons you learned from boxing that you've applied to business?
Definitely, the biggest thing is just mindset. I remember distinctively so many times if I'm kind of training for a fight, or if I'm just training in general, you feel that your body is going to give up. But actually, if you just shift that mindset and just keep pushing through, because your mind gives up before your body, just keep pushing through, stay focused. So I think just that core thing there definitely has carried over into business. Because like we said earlier, when you have those tough times and you are thinking, this is tough, I don't know about this, I might have to throw the towel in. Actually, you keep pushing forward and you find a solution, and you're tenacious and you keep going, then that's what I think sets you apart from the rest. So that's a massive lesson that I learned from boxing for sure.
I have a bit of a theory, which is the more times you can put yourself through chosen suffering, so getting in the ring, sparring, whatever it could be, running, the more times you can put yourself in these artificially engineered scenarios, when the unchosen suffering comes around, because it will, then when it comes around, you can handle that chaos. And I think there's a lot of times where people are specifically looking for, they just want to be coasting at 10,000 feet above sea level, where everything's great and everything's good. But as we know, with business and life, that things come and go. And I recorded the last podcast that I recorded was with a really cool guy called Raul, who I went to uni with, and he opened up about being depressed about a year and a half ago. And it had me thinking, and on the outside, you look at this guy and you think, he's a really cool guy, looks like he's got his shit together. But then this happens, and you'd to think that the him 5 years ago that was looking at him last year would have thought, oh, in 4 years' time, I'm going to be at this level and I'm going to be doing this. But our life goes through peaks and troughs. And I really believe that the more times we can put ourselves in uncomfortable situations, the easier it becomes to get out of them.
Completely agree. I couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, the brain is a muscle and it needs to be trained. So if you can train that muscle to just consistently, push through those tough times, and like you say, you've artificially put yourself in that scenario, then when something catastrophic does happen, or you come across a big problem that's causing you a lot of stress, then your brain is going to be able to deal with that and process it much better than if you didn't do any of that stuff. And suddenly it just landed on your lap one day, and you're just going to be overwhelmed, and your brain's going to go into overload. So I completely agree with that. I think it's a great thing to focus on and live by.
So I've seen on your Instagram and LinkedIn that you've been running quite a fair bit. What's the reason behind running right now?
For me, it's just keeping fit. I put on a lot of weight actually last year, and running has kind of got me out of that hole. Do I want to get up in the morning and am I buzzing to go for a run? Probably not. But again, it's coming back to that. You put yourself through those tough times, do something you don't want to do, and then you get the reward after. So it's that delayed gratification, because I know, and I can remind myself in the morning when I don't feel like getting up, I know that after, I'm then going to get those endorphins. I can then have a nice coffee, and my day's started, before 9 o'clock, and I'm ready to go. I've already done that. So again, it's starting your day with something that's difficult to then hopefully make the rest of the day, a little bit easier to manage, so that if you do have those high stress tasks that come in, then actually you just remind yourself, no, I can do this. I'm not going to let it overwhelm me. If you just roll out of bed at 9-10 o'clock and you get your laptop up, for me, I know that doesn't set me out on positively for the rest of the day. I'll be snappy. I'm probably not going to have as much endurance if something's taking a lot of my energy. So yeah, getting up for running is keeping fit and getting the mindset right first thing. So yeah, I'm loving it at the minute. I'm enjoying the run. It's nice to be out in the nature. I could just go to the gym, and I do gym as well, but I like being out in the nature. You're seeing people. I live in Hampstead, so Hampstead Heath. It's just you got all the dog walkers in the morning. Hopefully the sun's normally shining. So yeah, man, it's just a great way to start my day.
Just going out there to kiss the frog, and then whatever you do afterwards, it's just easier. It's the cherry on the cake. I like the logic there. And for me, I don't tend to exercise in the morning, but before we've recorded this, I was out my local common. I went for a walk around there, and a lot of it is just taking your earphones out and just walking and embracing nature. And something I absolutely love to do. Even during the day, I'll go out for an hour, and wherever I can take a call on the phone on a walk, I will do it, as opposed to being behind a desk, because I think it's anxiety inducing at times, and it just gets quite monotonous and it's boring, to be honest, at times. So that was a big thing for me about having my own freedom and my own time. I was really curious, and this is something that I haven't delved into, so forgive me, but I know you've started your own podcast. What was the motivation behind that, and how have you found it so far?
Yeah, so far so good. Can't complain. My main motivation for that was a few things. Number one, it's a great networking tool. So, we've got some pretty notable guests that are kind of lined up, and there's no other world where you could you might be able to, but generally, these people are busy, and they'll get hundreds of messages. But there's no other world where you could just DM a person to just go, "Hi mate, can I just pick your brains for an hour?" Because naturally it's a one-sided thing there, right? I'm going to get much more out of that than the person is to take up an hour of their time. So it's a great networking tool to get in front of interesting people and learn from them. Secondly, it's also a great way to raise profile, and if you're dealing with people that maybe have a bit of a following and they've got credibility and they've got an interesting story, naturally we're then collaborating with those people. We're then shown on their pages, so it's a good way to get some reach there. Thirdly, I just love it. I love sitting there talking about business. So if I can do that with experienced people, then it's a bit of a hobby. I'm not expecting to monetize it, but on the fourth point, there is potential to turn that into a business at some point if we can build a reputation, we get a following, we get viewers consistently. So I think with all of those things combined, for me it's a no-brainer. It costs us a bit of money. We don't get an ROI on that, especially in the short term right now. But with all of those things combined, it just makes complete sense for us to continue doing that. And yeah, so far so good. It's a good passion project.
And what type of topics do you typically talk about within business?
Mindset. I'm very conscious to try and give people tangible advice. So there's a lot of podcasts where you've got this CEO of this big bank or this billionaire, and they've been there and done it, and actually a lot of the stuff they say is quite generic and it's good for mindset, but does it give you that kind of tangible piece of information to then make you quit that job, or go and follow your passion, or go and set that business up? A lot of it is very it's not starting right from the beginning and giving that kind of tangible, actionable stuff. So I'm quite conscious to kind of tap into where people started and actually how they did it, right? So not just I started this business and scaled it to 10 million. It's but what steps actually did you take? Did you get a loan? Did you, did you raise investment, or did you just have money in the bank? Did you set yourself a savings goal before you set up? The things like that I really like to get into, because for me, I remember listening to loads of podcasts, trying to get myself G'd up, and it did, but it still didn't give me the information I needed, and maybe I was listening to the wrong ones. But so I'm quite motivated to do that on the podcast, as well as mindset and everything else. And that's kind of what we're focusing on at the minute.
And how many episodes have you recorded so far?
I think 7, but a few in the bank now to just kind of upload every couple of weeks. So I think we're on about 7. One of the biggest challenges is kind of keeping those guests consistent. People cancel, and then it's like, so we're about 7 episodes in, and we're aiming for 1 every couple of weeks.
Nice. And so far, as I said candidly, I haven't watched any of the episodes, and I will watch some of the episodes soon. Who have you had on? Anyone noteworthy? And can you share any of the upcoming guests, or are we going to jinx it?
Yeah, so filmed one last Monday. We had a very interesting guy called Mario Aleppo. He built Fireaway Pizza, the brand. I don't know if you've heard of. Yeah. So in 6 years, built over 156 stores, 60 million turnover last year. He's going international. He's going to Dubai. He's going to Amsterdam. Really, really interesting character. And he grew up, in London, capital of the state. Didn't really have many prospects, as he says, but just started a business from the ground up. Tried a couple of things before, didn't quite work out, and now he's got one of the fastest growing pizza franchises in the UK, soon to be international. So that was really interesting.
How did you land him?
Just cold outreach, to be honest. So we'll message 20, 30 people. 3 might see it, 1 might reply. So it's just cold outreach. And I think it is now getting easier because we've had a few decent guests. It's then like, right, okay, you can then name drop and go, we had Mario, and could you introduce us to this person? So I think it will get easier and easier as we go. I've also lent on a few personal connections as well, which has helped. So yeah, a bit of everything really. But yeah, it's good fun. I love it.
Oh, nice. That is so cool. And I find, so people who I know of a podcast, yourself, I've got 2 friends who they've got a, personal development self-help podcast called Triangle Theory. Shout out to those guys, Conrad and Rupert there. And with them, so I was talking to Conrad, and he used to work in Bespoke. But with him, he got a really cool guest. I don't know much about him, but he's got a really cool story. Raised, I think he sold his business for about £20 million, lost a load of money, built another business. And it's interesting that the older you see people get, the more their purposes move away. I think a lot of the younger generation, and this is kind of advice that I would say to a 20-year-old now, is when you fixate and focus purely on money, nothing good normally comes of it. If that's who you're hyper-focused on, then the actual enjoyment and the process of getting better day by day, you lose sight of that. And when things don't go well, because that's what happens consistently, then you quit. And Alex Hormozy says, what was the quote? He said, it was about failure. Anyways, I've forgotten now. But the point that he was making is, that was it. If you don't quit, you can't lose. And that's it. It's so simple. The person that just goes day by day, they're just going to get exponentially better in the long run. So, Sam, we have a tradition on the podcast where we get a question from the internet. So this is a question from Reddit, and it's quite a I don't think there's a set formula to this answer, so it's more of your perspective, which I'm really intrigued. So it reads, a fellow entrepreneur says, is it better to keep a 9-to-5 or quit and go full force with my business? They don't say what their business is, but what's your thinking? I imagine you're biased based on what you're doing now.
I was going to say, yeah, my opinion is 100% biased. And I kind of have this habit of anyone I'm sitting down with, if I'm out for a dinner or lunch or whatever, and I'm just with someone, because I'm so focused on business and I love it, I'm trying to get people G'd up to also love it. But what I've come to learn is that not everyone wants the same thing. Not everyone wants to run a business. People are actually quite happy to work a job, and that's absolutely fine. Fair play. I wish actually I could just be content with that. So obviously very circumstantial, depends on the business, depends on the type of person. I think really what people should start doing is, is actually just thinking 5-10 years ahead and not just focusing on the now and the quick wins. Obviously, that's important, but actually look at the next 5-10 years, work out what you want from life, and then just work backwards. Yeah. So really you can normally put that down to maybe a monetary figure. So if you're in a job and the prospects are to maybe earn 50, 60, 100 grand a year, but actually the life that you really want is sitting at £500,000 a year income, maybe what you then need to do is work backwards and go, okay, here's the problem, let's look for the solution. Does that mean that I need to set up a business? Let's crunch the numbers. If I'm not going to get that from this company, then maybe I need to look at productizing my skills and working out how I can get to that £500,000 mark. So obviously circumstantial, depends on the person, but I think what people should do is work backwards from what they want, and then go from there, and then maybe decide whether or not that means needing to set a business up, or needing to staying at the job for a certain period of time and hitting certain metrics. I think that would be my answer on that.
And I guess a bit more looking at the intrinsic motivations, what would you say drives you to get up and go every single day?
I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I'm not extremely money motivated, because I am. And a big part, but I love the journey, right? And I think a big part of that comes from, I know it's cliche and I'm not getting the violin out, but I did grow up in a family where we just didn't really have money. Yeah. So I remember that realistically, the only times we'd go out for dinner was maybe an annual birthday. Even then, I knew that money was tight and I could sense that. And I think my real core drive and motivation comes from making sure that when I build a family, we will never have that problem. So, it's not really material things. Yes, at some point, probably get a nice car, nice house, whatever, but that will follow. That's not what motivates or drives me. Don't care about designer clothes, couldn't care less. It's just about giving my family a life that maybe I didn't have, and just making sure that money is absolutely never going to be a problem.
Well, I think there's a bit of this stigma on being money motivated. I don't think that's a problem. I think when people come up with answers like you have just now, that's a real deep-rooted, intrinsic, I guess to an extent, trauma of saying that you're there and you didn't have certain things. I know with my parents, my dad immigrated from Tunisia, where they couldn't rub two coins together. My mum's family, English-Irish, immigrated from Ireland, and they weren't they weren't a really affluent family, but it's what happens from your childhood massively shapes what you want to do in the future. And I think kudos to you. It's not a case of you just want to make money to flex, as they say, and whatever. It comes from something very deep rooted. So I appreciate that. And it sounds like you're well on your way to achieving that goal as time goes on.
That's all we can do. Right?
That's it. It's a process. It's a journey. I'm curious.
I love the game as well. I love it.
We spoke just before the podcast, and you said you don't necessarily read, but you listen to audiobooks. So I guess a transient to the typical question I'll ask is, what are your top 3 podcasts / books? So you can intertwine however you want.
Yeah, for sure. So,
and you can't shut your own podcast out, I just got to say.
That's fine. So I think first one that comes to mind is one that I did, read end to end, was Grant Cardone 10X, because I just love this philosophy. Have you read that?
I haven't, no.
Fine. The general thing from that is, if you've got a goal, you just need to 10X it. It's a very simple equation, and it's something that I've always lived by, is that, so 10X, so if you've got a goal, you just need to 10X it, because then you're probably going to land somewhere in the middle, right? Or maybe at your initial goal. And I've always kind of lived by this is, if you've got somewhere that you want to be, don't set your goal there. Set it up here, because then you might kind of land somewhere down here. Whereas you set your expectations and your goals down here, you might then just land slightly below that. Now,
Yeah.
that could be argued that there's a recipe for, unhappiness because your expectations might be too high. But if you keep setting the goals much higher than where it actually needs to be, then you're probably going to land somewhere down here and get to where you need to be. At the end of it. So 10x Grant Cardone, it kind of articulates that very well in that book. Rich Dad Poor Dad, again cliche, but most people probably start there when they're looking at kind of personal finances. So
Definitely.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, love that book. And then what was the other one that I really enjoyed? Let's go podcast. Controversial, because I used to love Diary of the CEO, but I've gone off it.
I'm the same as you. I think a lot of people have moved away. My mum loves the Diary of a CEO, but I don't know. Like, look, I think Stephen Bartlett's done amazingly well, and he's great for the younger generation. But if I'm being honest, I think he's sold out a little bit. I think a lot of what he talks about now is health gurus and sex gurus, and it's all these outlandish stats of, oh, you can do this. And what it used to be was him documenting his business journey, which is why I really related to it.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember the days where it was like you'd sit there and you're listening to the CEO of Starling Bank or Deliveroo and Pret, and it's just like, right, this is what I'm tuning in for. So now it's just turned into all this, which is fine. And there's obviously an audience for that because it's the stats are there to back it up, right? But it's not what I initially tuned in for. So I actually, to be honest, need to find another kind of go-to because I actually don't have one at the moment. I'm quite liking Dodge Woodall and James Sinclair. They've both got a podcast separately, but they're pretty good in terms of like actual business interviews. So, but I haven't found a go-to yet, to be honest. Maybe you could recommend it.
I quite like bite-sized content, The Game by Alex Hormozy, and
Okay.
he's gone on record to say that he started to make all this broad content about his relationships and his wife Layla, and he just said, I just looked at him and thought, why am I doing this? So he's kind of come full circle again, tested, looked at his data, and just said, no, all I want to talk about is business. That's my core competency.
Cool.
That's what I really, really care about. That's
Yeah.
it. So I think I've got, and I think he's helped so many people online.
Yeah.
So a big thanks to him. I think if you're looking for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of bite-sized content, some of his pods are really good.
Fine. Well, that's I'm definitely going to add that to the list because I don't know why. Maybe he's just falling out of my algorithm or whatever. But I love him. Like I've watched a lot of stuff in the past, but I've kind of just not recently been kind of regularly tuning in. So that's a good shout, actually. Yeah, The Game. Yeah, because he's brilliant, isn't he?
Yeah. Chris Williamson's podcast, Modern Wisdom,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good podcast, but a bit more, that's not business related. So yeah, I mean, it's so many options there. Sam, where can people find you?
So I think I'm definitely most active on Instagram, Sam_the Mortgage Man. LinkedIn, Sam Mason. So yeah, find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Yeah, they're definitely my most active pages.
Cool. Well, lovely. We will tag you in the videos wherever we distribute them. YouTube, Spotify, your details will be there so people can find you. We'll put a link as well to your podcast, so it will be there. And thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best with everything.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it. Good chat.
Nice one. Take care.